Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ahlan wa sahlan wa marhaban bikum. Welcome to another edition of the Moulana Sulaimaan Ravat show here on ITV. We're really glad to have you with us this evening, and I'm glad to be joined by Moulana Sulaimaan Ravat as we discuss a very, very important topic, which is living to serve humanity. Moulana, assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the show.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Always a pleasure to be with you, Mohammed.
Jazakallah, Moulana. Moulana, to begin, we always hear the ayah, kuntum khayra ummatin, you've been created as the best of nations. But with this ayah comes responsibility for us as mu'mineen. Can you speak to us more? Give us a brief tafsir of this ayah and why is it so important in the bigger scheme of things, especially with our topic tonight?
When it comes to this ayah, we normally focus on the first part of it. Kuntum khayra ummah, you are the best of nations. And indeed we should. I mean, it's a great source of pride and honor and privilege and something that we should be very grateful that Allah has blessed us with. It is not by our choice, nor were we deserving to be from this ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It is by the decree of Allah. Musa alayhi salam wanted to be from this ummah, but Allah indicated to him that, "O Musa, I have not decreed for you to be from the ummah of Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam." So this is the best of nations. That's what the Quran very categorically says. Khayra ummah, kuntum khayra ummah. You are the best of nations. But why are you the best of nations? What is the hallmark? What is the salient feature of this ummah? Ukhrijat linnas. You have been taken out to serve humanity. So on the one hand, we take pride and we brag about the fact that we are the best of nations. But we don't ask ourselves the question. Let us ask ourselves the question. We don't even focus on the second part of the verse. That am I fulfilling this function of serving humanity? Ukhrijat linnas. What role are we playing what role am I playing to uplift humanity? We live in a world today where it's all about me. Very individualistic, very self-centered, very selfish. We find it difficult these days to do for our own parents, to do for our own children, to do for our own siblings. If you look at the pettiness that has crept in, now what must I do for my brother? He's lazy, he always wants me to, what must I do for my sister-in-law? Even for immediate family, we petty over small and silly issues. We don't realize that ukhrijat linnas, you are the best of nations as long as you remain service-minded, as long as you are in the service of humanity. You need to be promoting good, you need to be promoting the welfare of society. If we fail, then it means we fail in fulfilling the mandate of being the best of nations. Because a society which is insensitive to the suffering of other human beings will not be a prosperous society and cannot be claimants to be the greatest of societies. Yes, we've got the opportunity to be the best of nations because Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the best of prophets, but we now need to fulfill the requirements, right? And part of that requirement is you need to be service-minded. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to go and start an NGO. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be working for an NGO and that you have to be distributing hampers or that you have to be going on foreign trips to put up infrastructure for people in war-torn countries. That's one form of serving humanity, a great form, but that's not the only form of serving humanity. And that is, the call of the hour, that we don't have enough service-minded people today. Growing up, Mohammed, we would know that almost every family had one or two people who were dedicated to the service of the masjid, of the madrasa, community organizations. Today, everybody's crying that we've moved from being a community of traders to a community of professionals. And professionals don't seem to have the time, working hectic hours and in a very sheltered, you're living in a gated village. People can't get access to you because they can't get past your secretary or your PA. In the old days, if Ibrahim Bhai had a corner shop in one dorpi, every collector knew that I can pop in there by Ibrahim Bhai. Whether he was in the mood to give or not, he couldn't turn me away. He's going to give me a cup of tea and he's going to put some money in my hand for my organization. So we were contributing financially, even with our time we were giving. Now we are no longer so service-minded, and one is the importance of being it, and one, there's so many benefits and rewards. The Quran tells us, وَلَا تَنْسَوُا الْفَضْلَ بَيْنَكُمْ. Do not forget kindness amongst yourselves. You see, we have to understand that if we want to fulfill the legacy of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then that legacy is underpinned by the verse that tells us, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ, that you have been sent as a mercy unto mankind. Meaning that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam was a means of mercy for others. The way I live my life, am I a means of mercy to others? Or am I just living for myself? Am I just living for the fulfillment of my desires so that I can continue to tick off on my own bucket list? you are not only responsible for yourself. Of course, your foremost responsibility is yourself, then your immediate family, your dependents. قُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ وَأَهْلِيكُمْ نَارًا. But you have a responsibility beyond that, and that's a responsibility towards the collective, towards the community, towards the society, towards the country. I've spoken previously about being an active citizen. Islam has given us enough guidance that even in your country, you owe it to your country, you owe it to your land to be an active citizen. We should not only be giving our time towards community projects that serve the Muslim community in particular, we also should be giving our time towards community projects that serve the nation as a whole, because we are a product of the nation. The prosperity of the nation means our prosperity. The downfall of the nation and the country means our downfall. So Islam merges public and private interests. They counterbalance each other. They kind of depend on each other. If society is prosperous, the individual is prosperous. And if the individual is prosperous, then society will be prosperous, right? So there's the individual responsibility and the collective responsibility. And this is something that we need to understand. We have a social responsibility. We have a responsibility towards being active citizens of our country. We cannot. Islam does not allow this. It does not advocate this, that you live only for yourself.
Something very important is we are not an island, and we need to serve humanity. But also what you mentioned earlier on is regarding serving humanity. It doesn't have to be financial. Sometimes we're under the misconception that if you want to serve somebody, if you want to serve humanity, you want to do some good, it has to come from your pocket. But as we mentioned in other shows, time also, giving somebody your time could also be a means of serving humanity.
It's in many ways a more productive way. It's easier to give your money, especially if you're a person of means. Yeah, okay, yes, take it and go. Right, I'm busy now. Just take it, write the receipt quickly and go. To give your time is much more difficult because nowadays everybody's struggling to find time. So it may be in the form of time. It may be in the form of a good word. It may be in the form of your contacts, your connections. Somebody needs some help and you've got the contacts and the connections. It could be spiritual, it could be intellectual, it could be emotional. Sometimes people just need a shoulder to cry on. Sometimes they just need some advice, so your experience. But the bottom line is you need to have an active social conscience. There's a strong link between Iman and having an active social conscience. The demand of Iman is not that you only perform your salah, give your zakah, keep your fast and go for Hajj. You have to realize that other Muslims have a right over me. There are varying degrees of right? So your dependents have the highest degree, then your immediate family, then your extended family, your immediate community, your extended community, the broader country, the broader ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We are all part of a family, a human family, and each member needs to be concerned about the welfare of the other members of that family. There is a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam wherein the Nabi of Allah says, "Al-Muslimu akhul Muslim," that a Muslim is a brother unto his fellow Muslim, even if you are not a blood brother. La yadhlimuhu, you don't oppress the person because it's your brother. So don't harm. But we normally stop there. We say, I'm not harming anybody. I mind my own business. I live my own life. That's good up to a particular point, but that should not be an excuse for you to be oblivious of the needs of others. One is not to harm them. That's good, but it's only half. We normally stop there. We say, you see, I live for myself. I don't get involved in anybody's praikis. I don't get too much involved in anybody's matter or in any issue or any community thing, too many politics, too many issues. I just live for myself. Look, of course there are politics. Politics in community work will make Zuma and Malema, look like they're novices. A lot of politics, but it's still a requirement. It's still necessary, and Allah will reward you for the difficulty that you go through. Because the hadith then goes on to say, "Wala yuslimuhu," that when a fellow Muslim is a brother unto you, meaning you've got a social responsibility. Not only shouldn't you harm them, you can't leave them in the lurch when they need you. That's also your responsibility. Al-mu'minuna wal-mu'minat ba'duhum awliya'u ba'd. That you are helpers and supporters unto one another. Al-mu'minu lil-mu'mini kal-bunyan. You're like a wall. One brick rests on the other. Every brick rests on the other. And every brick has to support the other for that wall to remain standing.
Something that we've always heard is the community, especially the Muslim community in South Africa, we've seen it during the last 10 or 12 months with COVID, how they've gotten together to help those who are less fortunate. And it hasn't only been helping Muslim people, it's been helping throughout the country. Interestingly, that so many people have actually nominated one of the so-called Muslim organizations for a Nobel Peace Prize. So it shows the importance, and it also brings out the goodness of Islam in a world with Islamophobia, in a world where Muslims are always looked upon in a negative light, to show that Muslims are serving people, and it's not based on politics, it's not based on anything but to serve humanity.
No, absolutely. And I think we must acknowledge the positive, the many positive that exists. What we need to focus on in terms of improving is that we should not only be community-centric and serving humanity at times of catastrophe. So when there's an earthquake somewhere, or where there is a tsunami, or where there's COVID-19 and you're in hard lockdown and people are suffering, of course at that time the need is most acute. But the challenge is in serving humanity on an ongoing basis, even if you're not formally part of an NGO, or you're not, it's not your work now, you know, your full-time occupation to be a humanitarian, as they say. Each one of us, notwithstanding our careers and our businesses, we need to be living in such a way that we serve humanity via our time, via our wealth, via our expertise, via our thoughts, via our opinions, via our support, via even if the support is just moral. You see, one is we have a responsibility to the current generation in terms of our community, in terms of the ummah, but we also have a responsibility to future generations. When you live for yourself, you only live in the moment. Think about it. Those of our forebears who came to South Africa 100, 150 years ago, they were not self-centered. They were community-centric. They thought long-term. That's why today we have the masjids that we have the madrasas that we have. And even what was built after that, right? It was built on the foundations that they laid in terms of community infrastructure. So they had a futuristic plan. They understood that, you know what, we can't only look out for the needs of the community now. We need to forecast and say, right, what will be the needs of the community going forward? And we need to then live in a way that makes it possible. Look, there's an interesting example. When Iraq was conquered in the time of Umar radiallahu anh, the soldiers wanted to divide the land, the fertile land, amongst those who were part of the army, as part of the booty. And Umar radiallahu anh said, no, that will benefit you individually. Find me a solution where you will benefit and the community will benefit as well. And eventually then they came up with a situation where they were given permission to irrigate the land, but some of those proceeds had to go to the community sector. They had to then pay a tax to the Baytul Mal. So you can't only look at individual benefit. You've got to see what is the collective benefit. That's why the Quran talks about a very important dua. وَالَّذِينَ يَقُولُونَ, those who say, رَبَّنَا اغْفِرْ لَنَا, oh Allah, forgive us, وَلِإِخْوَانِنَا الَّذِينَ سَبَقُونَا بِالْإِيمَانِ, and those who passed on before us. So you have a responsibility towards those who have passed. Whatever they have developed, you need to nurture it now. So if the previous generation built an organization, you need to now make sure that the organization grows. It does not stagnate. It does not retrogress. And then, وَلَا تَجْعَلْ فِي قُلُوبِنَا غِلًّا لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, don't let us have any rancor in our hearts towards those who are believers. Meaning in terms of the current, I must have the welfare of everyone else at heart. I must not be jealous over them. I must not be envious. I must not have any kind of hatred. So that's what you call a true Islamic legacy, where you work to preserve what the people before you did, and you also work to preserve or to build for the people currently and for those who are still to come.
Well, you mentioned something very important, which is the responsibility to the future generations, and we make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to reward our forefathers who came to this country and set up the foundations, put the foundations in there for us to prosper as a community. We're going to take our first break now. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Moulana Sulaimaan Ravat show here on ITV, where we're discussing living to serve humanity. Moulana, before the break, we spoke about the responsibility of the future, of the past generations, and our responsibility towards the future generations. Something that I've been thinking about is, because of the world we're living in, and you mentioned it also previously, that people are not working in a shop, they're working professionally. How do we get the newer generation to be involved in doing more community work? It doesn't have to be, as you said, as part of an NGO, but just serving in your masjid, serving on different boards, community organizations. We're not seeing that many younger people moving on to there. We still see the same old people holding on to those positions.
One is you've got to lead by example. If you show that as a father, as an elder, you're passionate about community work, And you don't only talk the negative that go with community work in front of kids. Sometimes, they only hear the father talking about masjid committee meetings, politics, this, that, so long, so laborious. This one did that one did that. So then you're only showing them the negative of it. You're not showing them the positive of it. So we need to speak to our children from the time they are young. As teachers and educators in schools, we need to make them realize you cannot live for yourself. Greatness is not dependent on you living for yourself. Greatness, if you want to be great people are those who lived more for others than they lived for themselves. They were like candles. They burned themselves out in order to be able to provide light for others. Then we must also make them realize what the benefits are. Like when Musa alayhi salam asked Allah that who is the most beloved to you from the creation, Allah said, a person who is saddened by the slightest misfortune of another person. Now, sometimes, you think middle of the night you get a call, hey, somebody's stuck somewhere. You think, hey, why did they phone me, man? They should have phoned somebody else. But if you want to be considered to be the greatest of Allah's creation, take that person's misfortune to be your own, their problem to become your problem. Abu Bakr radiallahu anh used to say that like you have zakat on your wealth, you have zakat on your body. And the people used to say, but what's the zakat of the body? He used to say, take somebody else's problem and make it your own problem. Take somebody else's misfortune, make it your own misfortune. Give you an example of Ibrahim bin Adham, the great sage. One day he was traveling with his entire entourage. And it was late at night, it was cold, and there was that wind that bites with a chill. And they were looking for some place where they could get a bit of respite from the wind. And they found this dilapidated building. So they went in, and it gave them some respite from the wind. But because the door was no longer there, the wind was still coming in through the door. And they somehow said, okay, this is better than being totally in the open. And they found their spaces there, and they all went to sleep. And next minute, they all fell off to sleep. And when they woke up, after some time, they found that, it's fairly warm, notwithstanding the fact that there's no door. How is that possible? And when they looked, they found that the Sheikh, Ibrahim bin Adham, in order to ensure that his disciples get a good night's sleep, he went and stood the entire night in the doorway. Let the wind hit him so that it would not penetrate, it would not go in, and that those who were his juniors, his disciples, who were with him to benefit from him, they could get a good night's sleep. Now that's what you talk about, the spirit of serving others. And there's great reward in this. There's a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, wherein the Nabi of Allah says, "Man masha fi hajati akhihi hatta yuthabbitaha lahu, adallahu Allahu azza wa jal bi 75 alf malakin yusalluna lahu wa yad'una lahu in kana sabahan hatta yumsiya wa in kana masaan hatta yusbih. ولا يرفع قدما إلا حتى الله عنها بها خطيئة ورفع بها درجة." The hadith says that if you go out to help somebody, then Allah sends 75,000 angels to give you shade and to make dua for you and to seek forgiveness on your behalf. If you did it in the morning, until the evening. If you did it in the evening, until the morning. Every step that you take when you're going to help someone, you're going to serve someone else, one sin of yours is forgiven and your rank is being increased by one, apart from the fact that you get a reward for every step. Now just look at that one hadith. Subhanallah, what phenomenal reward. Imagine those people who dedicated their lives towards the service of others. Sometimes we feel, why me? Somebody knocks on your door, now he needs help. You say, hey, why me? Why always you come to me? The answer to this is also found in a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, narrated by Abdullah ibn Umar. Inna lillahi khalqan khalaqahum li hawaij an-nas yafza'u an-nasu ilayhim fi hawaijihim ulaika al-aminuna min adhabillah. Allah creates in His creation some people who are like a magnet. Whoever is in need, gravitate towards them. So sometimes you may think, why they only come towards me? Because Allah made you a magnet. Allah wants you to come to them. Allah is going to help them. But Allah is using you as a conduit. And the benefit of you being used as a conduit is you are protected from the punishment of Allah. So they are benefiting you by coming to you. They are benefiting you by coming to you. They are doing you a favor. You can't chase them away and say, but why only me? Why only you come to me? Why you only ask me? It's a sign that Allah intends good for you, that Allah is sending them to you. Allah is putting that need in front of you. Allah is making you the means of somebody else being assisted and somebody else being helped. And that's critical because, a selfish, self-centered person, a person who doesn't have a broader picture in front of him, worries and wonders, why always me? Why must I always be the one to do it? Why must I always be the one to carry the burden? Well, maybe Allah wants it to be you because Allah loves you more and Allah wants you to have greater reward.
It's so important. We always say this, why me, why me? When the guy comes to your window at the robot, this guy's coming to me every day. Why does he only come to me? But you put it so beautifully. It's, Allah has sent him to you, Allah is using you as a means to help him, and we're getting reward for that. And it really changes your whole perspective of why it's so important to serve humanity and also doing it with the correct intention.
No, absolutely. And there's benefits at multiple levels, right? So one is you help others, Allah removes your difficulties that you don't even know are going to come your way. Difficulties of the year after, not only difficulties of this world. You financially assist someone, Allah grants you barakah in your wealth. You help somebody, not only monetarily, but in other ways as well, you become protected from the punishment of Allah. You want honor in this world. The people who have true honor are not the people of wealth. Notice that. It's not your wealth. It's if you use your wealth to serve others. The people of true honor are those who genuinely and sincerely serve other people. Even amongst non-Muslims. Why does Madiba have the profile that he has? Is it because of money? Bank balance? I mean, if you look at some of the richest South Africans these days, they have much more money than what he had. He was not in that league by any stretch of the imagination. But it was because of the sacrifice that he made for the benefit of others, where he gave 27 years of his life so that the country could be freed from the clutches of apartheid. That is why people appreciate him. That is why he has honor in this world. Imagine for a believer what the honor will be in the year after if you live your life in the service of others. The angels are constantly praying for you. You are protected from the hellfire. Every step you take, you've got 75,000 angels supplicating for you. It's like you're moving with 70,000 bodyguards. And you're getting all of these rewards, and your sins are being forgiven, and you are being helped. Even on the day of Qiyamah, when we have to cross the bridge of Sirat, which is a very difficult bridge to cross, sharper than the edge of a sword and thinner than the strand of a hair, as we know the description in the ahadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But in the end of the day, you'll be able to cross it easily if you lived your life in the service of others.
It's so important to live our lives in the correct way and serve people, serve humanity. And that's also a teaching of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Moulana, we're going to take our second break now. When we come back, we're going to continue this really, really interesting conversation. Welcome back to the Moulana Sulaimaan Ravat show here on ITV as we discuss a really important topic, which is living to serve humanity. Moulana, before the break, we had a really interesting conversation with regards to our topic. Moving on now, how, as practical examples, how can we, as people, serve humanity?
One way of serving humanity, which we don't talk about often enough, is to create happiness for other people, to effect happiness in the lives of other people. There's a hadith, من أدخل على أهل بيت من المسلمين سرورا لم يرضى الله له ثوابا دون الجنة. If you bring happiness to a household, your reward is nothing less than Jannah. Nothing less than Jannah. Allah will not want to give you anything less than Jannah. Now, whether it was a household that was hungry and you put food on the table, whether it was a household where they just lost somebody close to them, they just needed a kind word. They just needed a shoulder to cry on. They just needed somebody to give them some perspective, to give them some advice. You see, if you want to live a fulfilling life, one wise man once said, and I know this person is still alive, he's an elderly person, but a man of immense wisdom. He said that make sure that every person that you meet, you say something nice, a kind word. You bring a smile to their face. You leave them with some happy feeling. Leave them with a happy feeling. Sometimes you find some people, just the way they greet you, they talk to you, even if you don't have to talk to them anything specific. They compliment you about something general, even if it's just the way you dressed. It makes you feel so nice. It makes you feel good, even if you're having a tough day. And that's also part of serving humanity. Today, half the world is in oppression, the other half is in depression. Serving humanity is wearing a smile on your face. Serving humanity is giving people your full attention, not divided attention where you're talking but you're looking at the mobile. Serving humanity is just being willing to give a person a time, 2-3 minutes, just to ask them how they are and to talk to them. Sometimes you'll see some people, they're neglected, whether in a congregation, in a masjid, whether at a function. No one really bothers with them. They're not so known. They're not so prominent. You give that person some recognition, and that is service to humanity. You see, khidmat se khuda milta hai, as they say in Urdu. That's the way of securing the love of Allah. Nuh alayhi salatu wassalam, we know that after preaching to his people for 950 years, very few listened. So he made dua to Allah, لا تذر على الأرض من الكافرين ديارا, that destroy all of them. After that happened, Allah told Nuh alayhi salam that, oh no, I want you to make clay pots. So Nuh alayhi salam did not question the wisdom in the instruction of Allah. He made pots, clay pots with his own hands. Then the second instruction came, oh no, I want you to personally break all of these pots. So again, he's a Nabi, he doesn't question the decision or the instruction of Allah. He breaks one and the second, and after that he starts crying. So Allah says, oh no, why are you crying? So he says, oh Allah, it's difficult for me to break something which I've built with my own hands. So Allah said, oh no, even though your nation were unbelievers, you got frustrated with them because you preached for 950 years and they didn't listen. Did it not cross your mind when you asked me to destroy them, that you're asking me to destroy that which I myself created? So it shows the love that Allah has for His creation. And in order to become a beloved of Allah, serve those who are beloved to Allah. The hadith tells us that al-khalqu iyalullah, that the creation is the family of Allah. Allah doesn't have a family in the true sense because none can be compared to Allah. Right? So normally the father and the son and the wife, there's similarities and commonalities. There's nothing that's similar to Allah and no one. But for purposes of understanding, it means like how your family people are very close to you. The creation is very beloved to Allah. فَأَحَبُّ الْخَلْقِ إِلَى اللَّهِ. If you want to be the most beloved to Allah, be good to the creation of Allah. Be good to the creation of Allah. The way to reach Allah and secure the happiness of Allah is through service to the creation of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. Another way, Muhammad, of serving humanity is to wish well for people. Jarir bin Abdullah Bajali, radiyallahu anhu, was a Sahabi. And he sent his slave one day, his servant, to buy a horse. And the slave came back and said, I bought it for 70 dirhams. I said, no, too little. Go back and pay more for it. It's worth more. I said, but I mean, the seller agreed, so the deal is valid. He said, yes, but Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, I must wish well for every Muslim. So if I was the seller, and if I sold it for less than its value, later on if I found out that it was more valuable than what I sold it for, I would regret it. It wouldn't be a nice feeling. So go and give the person extra and tell him that, you know what, this is worth much more. You're selling it to me for too little. Where will you find this kind of well-wishing today? To wish well for another person in your business dealings, in the way you interact with them, in the way you park. Sometimes we park in a way that's convenient for us but inconvenient for everybody else. You know, you go into the masjid and you read salah right at the door entrance. Now the whole ummah must wait for you. And then you want to read the salah with the most focus and concentration. It's time for the Jummah talk to start. And now you're sitting right in front of the mic and you read the longest 4 rakats of sunnahs. And then you say, well, namaz is more important than the bayan. It's not about namaz being more important about the bayan. The bayan has a stipulated time. The person is prepared. He's come from somewhere. You're eating into his time. You want to read lengthy rakats of sunnahs. It's greater reward for you to go and do it on the edge then. Don't inconvenience people. That's also a way of serving them, by not inconveniencing them. You know, the greatest service to humanity is to have that heart of gold, that spirit of gold. Junaid Baghdadi rahmatullah alayhi was once walking along the Tigris River. You know, nowadays also you get these lighties, what they do now, when they're in a high, you know, they're moving, they're driving a car, they're pumping the music, and now they see one Baji walking on the street to the masjid, they lower the window, they hurl 1 or 2 profanities and obscenities against him. It's part of the fun, right? So the youngsters of that day were merrymaking on the boat, and they were in the river with the boat, and he was walking on the river bank, and they were telling him, you know, a lot of unsavory things, and they were ridiculing him because he was like this pious sage, and they were like these guys living it up. So somebody said to him, why don't you curse them? They are so unruly, they are so rude, they are so disrespectful, why don't you curse them? He said, no, I don't curse. I must wish well for others. He said, oh Allah, like you have granted them superficial happiness in these activities of theirs in this world, grant them the true happiness of the after. Make their actions such that they secure the true happiness of the after. He never despised them. That's the main thing. He never despised them. And not to despise someone is also part of serving humanity. To serve humanity, you have to go through a lot of difficulties. And that's why I made reference to the hadith earlier on, that if you mix with people and you bear patiently the difficulties that goes with mixing with people and working with people, you get greater reward than that person who sits in isolation, dedicates himself only to ibadah and worship.
It's so important what you've mentioned. So many times we think serving people is literally going somewhere, giving a hamper, giving money, giving even your time. But it's the small acts of kindness, the little acts of kindness that are so important. And the rewards, as you mentioned, are so much. by just being good to people, by saying a kind word, by being nice to somebody. And that's something so many of us are guilty of. We forget the niceness in us sometimes. Life is so fast-paced. We don't make time for even the closest people to us in our lives.
Random acts of kindness. Set out every day to just do random acts of kindness, to the point that you are known for your kindness. There's one hadith when Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Ala ukhbirukum bi khayrikum min sharrikum?" Shall I not tell you who are the best of you and who are the worst of you? They said, "Bala ya Rasulullah." He said, "Khayrukum ma yurja khayruhu wa yu'minu sharruhu." The best of you are those that people have hope of goodness for that person and they know that there's going to be no evil. Wa sharrukum man la yurja khayruhu wa la yu'minu sharruhu. And the worst of you are those that people have no hope of goodness from you and they know that there's going to be some evil. If you develop a profile in the community and in society that people know, they know that this person, if I meet him, he's going to say something good, he's going to do something good, they look forward to meeting you. To this point, make this your motto in life. When Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Al-mu'minu ya'laf wa yu'laf." A believer is that one who loves others. And because he loves others, they love him in turn. وَلَا خَيْرَ فِي مَنْ لَا يَأْلَفْ وَلَا يُؤْلَفْ. There's no goodness in that person who doesn't love others. And because he doesn't love others, they don't love him. Let you be a person whose heart is overflowing with love. And you're causing happiness to people, you're causing ease to people, you're uplifting difficulty and hardship from people, you're giving motivation to the depressed. And then the hadith concludes by saying, وَخَيْرُ النَّاسِ أَنْفَعُهُمْ لِلنَّاسِ. The best of people are those who are of the most benefit to others. And that's where it ties up with our theme, that live to serve humanity by means of your knowledge, by means of your wealth, by means of your profession, your expertise, your time, your experience, or even your attitude, even the words that you say. The bare minimum is not by causing harm. That is how you would serve humanity.
So important what you said. We're going to take our final break now. When we come back, we're going to conclude this discussion. Stay tuned. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the Moulana Sulaimaan Ravat show as we conclude this really important topic, which is living to serve humanity. Moulana, we've discussed a lot in the show, but to conclude, we have to just mention once again the importance of serving humanity as Muslims.
Look, the Quran describes Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam to us. لَقَدْ جَاءَكُمْ رَسُولٌ مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ. A Nabi has come to you from amongst you, is a human like you. عَزِيزٌ عَلَيْهِ مَا عَنِتُّمْ حَرِيصٌ عَلَيْكُمْ. Your difficulty is his difficulty. He's always anxious about your well-being. So we are not following the sunnah. And we don't have the qualities of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam if we don't live to serve humanity. If other people's difficulty does not become our difficulty, if other people's hardship does not become our hardship. Look after people's interest even after they have passed away. See to their children, see to their legacy. If you please a person after his demise, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "You please me in my grave." And if you please me in my grave, Allah will be pleased with you on the day of Qiyamah. I want to wrap up this discussion by narrating a story. Shaqiq Balkhi and Ibrahim Nakhai were two sages who were contemporaries. And one day Ibrahim Nakhai asked Shaqiq Balkhi that what was the turning point in your life? What made you dedicate yourself totally to the worship of Allah? He said, you know what? One day I saw a bird that was blind and injured. And I thought to myself, this bird can't survive. It can't see and it can't fly. And then I saw another bird coming, the able bird, and the able bird had food in its beak and it was feeding the blind, crippled bird. And I thought, wow, that oh Allah, you taking care of the sustenance of this crippled, blind bird, which is an insignificant creature in comparison to a human. I'm not going to worry about my sustenance. I'm taking lesson from this and I'm dedicating the rest of my life to your worship. You'll take care of my sustenance. So Ibrahim Nakhai said to him, it's a phenomenal lesson you took. You took a lesson from the crippled bird, that even though it was crippled and blind, the sustenance still came because it was decreed. But it would have been better if you took a lesson from the able bird and dedicated the rest of your life to the service of those who required your assistance. And that's the lesson here. Live to serve humanity. If Allah has given you wealth, use that. If Allah has given you talent, use that. If Allah has given you knowledge, use that. If Allah has given you words, use that. If Allah has given you experience, use that. If Allah hasn't given you any of those, then not by harming them, but live to serve humanity. Because if you want to truly call yourself an ummati from the best of nations, then ukhrijat linnas. You have to fulfill the mandate taken out to serve not only Muslims, but humanity.
Well, just before we go, an incident, a whole incident does come to mind where in the years gone by, we used to have travelers traveling to the country towns, and they weren't family of each other, but the people in these towns used to go all out to serve the travelers coming from Joburg to the country towns. And unfortunately, we've lost that now. Since things have moved more towards towns and the highways are there. But an old man once told me, he said, the highways came and our friendships went. Because before you used to take the side roads and then going to all the small dorpies in that. But now life is, and we've mentioned it a few times, life has gone so fast. We're forgetting the small things, how important it is just to serve people together and also keep the bonds of friendship going.
Absolutely. They would fight with one another to take the traveler home and to give him a meal and to look after him. You see, there were no formalities those days. Potluck, whatever the wife cooked for the family that day, that's what you would eat. Nowadays, if you want to invite somebody, you must give your wife 2 weeks' notice because there's to be 3 types of starters and 5-course meal and 2 types of dessert and 3 types of confectionery that goes with the tea. So once we have thrown simplicity out of the window, life has become more complicated. And when life was simple, it was much more fulfilling, joyous. We were able to give much more for ourselves.
Moulana, Jazakallah so much for your time this evening. A really, really important topic. And to the viewers out there, I think the lessons we've taken tonight are so important. Let us learn to serve humanity. It doesn't have to be financially. It just, let's be nice to each other. Let's be good to everybody around us. From all of us in the team, stay safe. Fi amanillah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.